Hello, Manhattan, America.
America.
Right. Welcome to the show.
Angel
Right.
and the Wiz.
Welcome to Angel and the Wiz. Let that be a lesson to you. Okay, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to see you. It's always a pleasure to see you. Very nice.
to see you too.
Very good. You're very
I
kind.
missed you.
Did you really?
I did.
Oh.
From week to week.
That's nice.
Yes.
That's very nice. Now, we're going to... She's already told me, you know, she was very upset about something that happened.
I was having a bad day.
She was upset about something that happened in a different state. This didn't happen in New York. But because we're seeing it around the world now, we thought we would, you know, broaden our horizons. But it could happen in New York. Okay.
It could happen anywhere.
Could happen anywhere. So we're going to talk
anywhere
about that.
in the United States.
And let me tell you, we have a little surprise for you all.
I have no idea what it is.
She has no idea. She's going to find out at 22 minutes in. I'm going to tell her what this. We have a little surprise at the end of the show, and I hope that you like it when it happens. Now, set up where we're going here.
So a couple weeks ago, first of all, we know education's been a big topic
Yes.
in the United States
Yes.
recently with all of the stuff that's going on between Wisconsin and all the other states.
Yes.
And I am a Florida teacher. I'll just say that I'm in
Yes.
Florida and I'm a teacher. And they passed, the Senate here in Florida, which is mostly Republicans,
Okay.
passed a bill that was promoting teacher merit pay, which
Right.
you guys know from previous shows I'm not all about,
Right.
and ending tenure, which
Right.
from previous shows you know I'm not all about.
Right.
And they did it in such a manner that it was impossible for any argument or debate to happen, which
Okay.
was really frustrating.
Okay.
Really frustrating.
Okay.
Because something like this happened 2 years ago with Governor Chris, when Governor
Okay.
Chris was in Florida.
Right.
And he was pummeled with emails, voicemails, and letters from his constituents saying,
Right.
do not pass these bills.
Right.
Well, now there's a new governor, Governor Rick Scott,
Right.
and the Senate's like, well, let's do round 2.
Okay.
And they passed that bill.
Okay.
And the House is, I believe, getting ready to pass that bill,
Okay.
and I believe Governor Rick Scott is
gonna sign it.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is very frustrating because they're not listening to the people.
Okay. Now let me. Now I just want
But
to.
in the heat of all that,
Right.
I sent Wiz an email saying
I'm
would like.
going to smack those Republicans
so
around.
mad. So mad.
Well, but now, and we're going to talk about it from both sides because I support that. But one of the things I want to point out for the people that maybe missed one of the shows we talked about this, even though you are not big on merit pay and you are not big on the lack of tenure, you still are very cognizant of the fact that we need to be able to have a way. Let's just call it a way for now, because I don't want to get into a fist fight.
There
okay?
needs to be a method of correctly evaluating teachers.
Right.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
But telling me that my living,
Right.
my method of living and survival,
Right.
my paycheck is
Right.
based solely on how 180 of my students do
Right.
on a test
Right.
that does not effectively assess anything
Right.
is immoral.
Okay. And
It's like saying for those people who have kids, your ability to be a good parent is based on whether your children don't have any cavities.
Okay, and we're
You know?
going to come back to them. But the other thing I want to let them know is that even though you're not a tenure flag or you're not happy about this tenure thing, you are also astute in the fact, and you've said this before on the show, that you understand that we have a problem because bad teachers are not being let go because, what is it, the first in, last out?
They usually do a last in, first out type thing. So
Okay.
the newest teachers are usually the first to go. There are bad teachers out there. I'm not going to say that all the teachers are and there are bad teachers who maybe at one point were good teachers. They were fantastic teachers. The students have changed.
Right.
The students have changed. The culture has changed, and they did not adapt to that. So
That's right.
therefore,
And we don't
they
want to
have not been successful in their classrooms, and they have tenure. And just recently, one of the big unions, and I think it was the National Education Association,
Okay.
they just said, well, all right, I think we need to reevaluate how we look at tenure.
Right.
And that if a teacher is on tenure and is not meeting certain requirements, that they can be put on a 1-year probation or 2-year probation, and if they don't improve within those 2 years, then perhaps we should be able to fire them.
And that's scary. Perhaps we should be able to.
Because that's the National Education Association,
right?
And you have to remember that
enemy of children.
Well, no, it's not.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's not enemy of children.
I'm sorry.
But you have to remember that no matter what kind of education policy is set forth by the national government or national unions or whatever, it's still up to the states to implement. And they can interpret those laws how they see fit.
They have flexibility?
And they have some flexibility. Some.
Okay.
But the biggest, what I after a couple weeks of soul searching, I realized that the biggest problem in education isn't a bill that's being passed, it's a law that's already in existence, which is the No Child Left Behind law.
And okay, now tell us, because I'm gonna. One of the things I thought you were really going to seriously beat me up.
No.
So I had something over here.
You were ready to throw back, but
not to throw back. I was going because see, one of the nice things about you is that you're a bright girl, and you're smart. You know, you mean you're not. You mean, and so. I was gonna, and I still may come back to this as an illustrative example later on, as long as we have the time. But what about No Child? Why is No Child Left Behind a problem? Because I think the biggest problem.
The name of the law, No Child Left Behind, is a misconception. Because think back then in 2001 when it was brought up for debate and whatever. Who's gonna vote against something that's titled No Child Left Behind?
Okay.
Nobody is. Okay. Also, a lot of people that are politicians really weren't very knowledgeable in education.
Right.
Nor did they consider how those words the words in the law are going to affect the schools 10 years later. Because the law is now going to be about 10 years old.
Okay.
The gist of the law is that every student in the United States will have to pass high-stakes standardized testing exams in reading and math.
Okay.
And that 100%, the goal is by 2014, 100% of the students in the United States will be proficient in reading and math.
That's impossible.
It is impossible. Schools are now being considered failing schools if a certain percentage of their students are not considered proficient.
Right.
Which that's not fair.
Right.
And what's happening is throughout the years, the law has required schools to create tougher standards and more rigorous tests. But when you really look at these tests, and I've seen, like, for the ones that I've seen and that are released, not to invalidate any testing, but I, as a math teacher who have taken lots of math courses, and I look at the math test and I think to myself, what do they want these kids to answer? And I'm not a stupid person. I'm not a genius.
Okay.
But I have to teach these kids to pass. I have to teach them enough content for them to pass a test. But when I look at the test, and if I don't know what the kids are supposed to do, how am I supposed to relay that information to the students? Now, does that make me a bad teacher?
No.
No, I don't think so. No. But that's what's happening. And I just read an article that because of the No Child Left Behind law, right now, this year, they think the estimate is 82% of our schools in the United States will be considered failing, which means a certain percent of their students did not meet proficiency levels.
Okay, now.
Does that mean 82% of the teachers in the United States are bad teachers?
No, and I have a problem with I have a problem with two things immediately. 100% is never attainable.
Right.
Okay, so it never should have been used as a guidance or a stick or a marker. That's not impossible. Now, then let me just back up. To show that the 82% are failing, what percentage of the kids have to not get to?
We have this thing that's called adequate yearly progress, AYP.
Right.
And it says that from last year to this year, students are expected to make a certain percentage of growth in their knowledge.
Okay.
So, and I don't know what that percentage is, and I should, but
anyway,
I don't. And if your student, but what they do is they break it down by classifications. So they look at these subgroups. So they look at white, all your ethnicities, then they look at your social economic status, and then they look at if you have English as a second language,
Right.
if you have some sort of learning disability,
Okay.
and those counts as points.
Okay.
So a student who is Hispanic,
Right.
lives in a low socioeconomic area,
Right.
doesn't speak, is English is his second language,
Right.
and maybe has a learning disability.
Right.
His single grade
Right.
on that test,
Right.
that score, counts 4 times.
How can
Exactly.
that be?
Exactly. Because
I thought you were going to say that his score now is lowered to such
no, it counts 4 times towards our school grade. Our school, which determines if
Right.
we're passing or failing.
Who dreams this stuff up? You see, that's a problem.
dreams that stuff up?
Washington, D.C. You know
George
what we
W.
should do?
Bush dreamed
we
that up.
should. No. He passed the law. He didn't write it.
I'll tell you.
You know what I mean?
I believe it was.
Look what I'm
I
up
do
against.
have
See,
it.
she's got reference
Well,
materials
I do
here.
have reference material.
Okay. But I mean, he supported the concept. Now, see, and let me say something else too.
Mm-hmm.
He supported the concept of No Child Left Behind. Okay? And I'm sure that he had
Right.
advisors and people that actually
Right.
did the work and everything else like that. He's the front guy. You know, we almost had a front guy in the last election, but we don't even have a front guy this time. But at least, so we had this front
here
guy.
you
He
go.
goes out. So, while, as in all hierarchies,
Mm-hmm.
that guy's responsible, but he's responsible for the people underneath him, and what they do.
Right.
I mean, you can't really say Bush wrote the law.
No, it was Rod Page, who was the Secretary of Education for the George W.
He
Bush
designed it?
administration. He was the one that developed this No Child Left Behind because that's what they were doing in Texas when
Right.
Bush was the governor.
Right, and so what I bet
And so when he
moved.
he moved up with
he moved with him.
Mm-hmm.
And what I bet is even this guy probably had people under him. So these are the people that do the
and
work.
let me tell you the funny thing about this, because No Child Left Behind idea started in Texas
Okay.
with Rod Page and Governor Bush at the time.
Okay.
And it seemed to work, this idea.
Right.
And then when they implemented into law, Texas scores weren't doing so well.
Right.
So what they were doing is lowering the requirements.
Okay, well, I think as soon as you go from here where it works to here
Where
to
they
apply
thought it was working.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you can't always do that.
No, you
How
can't.
many times, even on our own work, you say, somebody turns a light bulb on, he gets a great idea, and all of a sudden everybody's doing it, and you find out a few months later,
It's
hey,
not
this
working.
was never
Well,
a good idea.
Yeah, and this is what's happening now, is it's now 10 years later,
Right.
every teacher and high school and elementary school and middle school in the country is saying No Child Left Behind
Right.
is not good for our kids.
Right.
But now we have to go to the politics.
Oh.
Name a
luck.
Republican politician that's
Right.
going to revoke or want to change something done by George W. Bush.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
You-
Good.
yeah.
Now let's go
But-
here. Because look at what listen, let me tell you that and look at the the case that we're in now, where we got stuck with Obamacare, and the Democrats don't want to vote against it because it's their big bahuna up there. But, so I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Angel and the Wiz is so great, because we deal with things in reality.
We do.
We don't deal with things in politics,
No.
okay? And what does that tell us? 2 things immediately. A, politics should not be involved when trying to work out a way to do things, okay?
They should not, but they are.
I know, I realize that, but they should not be. So that means that if we're ever going to fix things, we got to start getting rid of the political ramifications from the nonsense, from the stuff that we're trying to do, so that we can do things based on what the people need. Because just like this merit pay thing and all that. Now, as an outsider, merit pay sounds like such a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea, but the problem is, and we discussed this before, they still do not have an effective,
way.
realistic criteria to judge. And the reason they don't is because you know who's not judged in merit pay? The parents. And that's the problem.
Part of the problem. Here's the
Part
other
of the
thing.
problem,
Is
But a big part of the
why is it in all the other countries in the world, teachers are the most highly regarded contributing citizens in that culture,
Right.
in that society,